Welcome to ADS sponsored webinar. Today I'm going to talk about a very important topic of COVID-19 vaccine. As you know, the vaccine got approved by the FDA just yesterday and it will be available for use starting Monday. So let's talk about some of the science behind the vaccine and its application, how good it is, and what are some of the concerns that people have. I'd like to address that. So without further ado, let's talk about the Operation Warp Speed. What is warp speed? For many of you who are not used to the Star Trek-like show, which was a very popular show, that simply meant the highest possible speed. And we wanted to get this vaccine because of the obvious pandemic-related morbidity, that is illness, and the mortality, that is death. In order to get the vaccine, it became so important that all the barriers had to be broken and vaccine had to be brought into reality. And it's just an amazing accomplishment of science that this COVID-19 vaccine became possible. This is just a wonder, I would like to say, that make the vaccine come out in such a short period of time. And how did that happen is in the history. But we'll see that what it takes to make a new vaccine and testing, manufacturing, and distributing it. So now we have a vaccine, and it is anticipated that approximately 100 million doses will be given by February of 2021, which is not that far away. And realizing that we are already starting injecting people in December 2020, that appears to be a formidable yet possible goal. So here is the involvement of the money. CARES Act, which stands for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. Under that act, the government funded $10 billion for the development of vaccine. And there was a private and public partnership to enable faster approval and production of the vaccine. So a lot of the red tape that is involved in any drug development was taken away, and just the science was allowed to occur, and which is what happened. Funding was increased to another $8 billion, a total of $18 billion, and I'm sure that there is more funding after October 2020 was implemented. So how is this possible? So if we look at this little complex slide here, here is the private enterprise, Pfizer, along with another German company, Moderna. The two companies, they are the leaders in the mRNA genetic formulation of the vaccine. They have successfully made the vaccine, and Pfizer vaccine is approved as of yesterday, as you all know. This vaccine development process, the research, etc., is the longest process that it took. But there is further processing that is required. So you have to make it in a kit. The vaccines have to be stored at a certain temperature. There are a lot of regulations regarding the stability of the vaccine. And then how this vaccine is going to the distribution centers, who is going to transport them. So Pfizer, for example, has FedEx and UPS, the pre-existing successful businesses contracted for the distribution of this vaccine, along with where it is going to be delivered and how it is going to be stored. And the temperatures, for example, Pfizer vaccine, which is available now, has to be stored at minus 70 degrees. And then it will be, of course, distributed to the health care providers, long-term care facilities and their patients. And then there is a list of priorities of the people who will be entitled to receive this vaccine. Please know that the vaccine is going to be free of cost and will be available to everybody. But the matter of time is what is important at this time. The Moderna vaccine is under the FDA approval process at this time, and they have their own distributors just like FedEx and UPS here, the McKesson distributors, and also they are utilizing the same kitting facility where the kits are made, and of course the vaccine will be delivered. And we will review both vaccines, what they are going to do. This slight bit of science here that I'm going to discuss is extremely important, and the importance of science is not to enhance your knowledge or bore you with the details, but the importance is that our trust, our confidence, our faith in this vaccine will only come if we fully understand that how this virus works and how the body defends itself, how the virus actually paralyzes our defense system, and how can we counteract and save our defense system so that it can continue to produce antibodies against the virus. And that's in a nutshell, in simple language, is the development process of a vaccine. So there is outer coat of this virus that you can see, but in here there is this nucleocapsid protein, and the purpose of this protein is to protect the virus RNA. And it keeps the virus RNA stable inside until this virus latches on to a human cell and then begins to inject it with the RNA, which will make hundreds of thousands of copies in the human body and will cause the disease that we all know. Many of these nucleocapsid proteins are linked together in a long spiral, wrapping and coiling the RNA to protect it. So it's a very sophisticated virus that nature has produced. In fact, many of these viruses are like this. So let's look at what's the complexity that this virus has, and do we have any handle, any understanding of this. So in January, we discovered the first case of COVID-19 on January 21st in New York. However, we were at the same time supplied with the genome of this SARS-CoV-2 virus by China, and the research started back then very quickly as soon as we learned about the genomic structure of this virus. This virus hijacks the living cells, as I said earlier, and replicates and spreads. So coronavirus finds a suitable cell in a body. There are receptors called ACE inhibitors. All our body all the cells in our body have that ACE receptor, and they are also clustered in the respiratory system, and that's where the virus easily gets the access through the nose and the mouth. And it injects a strand of RNA that contains the entire coronavirus genome, which is made up of almost 30,000 genes. The entire genome is 30,000 structures there. And here is the alphabets here. A stands for adenosine, C for cytidine, uridine, and guanosine. And these are the nucleosides which form the genome of this virus. So fortunately, we do understand, we do have that knowledge of the genome, and once we understand what the genome is, we can utilize it to our benefit in development of variety of vaccines against this virus. And this genomic technology, as we will see, is extremely important. It's a major breakthrough of a technology which has been sitting for a long time, for 15 to 20 years on the sidelines, but this COVID-19 emergency has made it reality. So this complexity is deciphered. At this time, we fully understand, except the time is too short as the virus is continuing to spread and killing the humans. So what happens once the coronavirus gets access through the ACE2 inhibitor in the body? This protein slows down the infected cell's production of its own protein. So anytime we have an antigen coming into the body, our cells begin to make antibodies against that antigen, that enemy. This virus actually will sabotage that action of the cell, and all it does is makes the cell produce the more viral proteins, which can continue to replicate in hundreds of thousands. It also prevents the cell from assembling antiviral proteins that could stop the virus. So it completely paralyzes the defense machinery of the human cell and just has its own purpose served in the or subserved in the body by the host cell or human cell. So in this cartoon, you will see whenever a new pathogen or disease gets into the body, it introduces a new antigen. And if we know, let's say the antigen is measles virus or flu virus or chickenpox virus, if the person is vaccinated, which we all are, we have pre-existing antibodies against these viruses. So now if the measles virus or every year flu virus, or unfortunately if somebody gets exposed to chickenpox, which is not prevalent, is exposed to one of these viruses, the antibodies are there to protect us from getting sick. Now if a new pathogen like COVID-19 is introduced, there is no antibody present. And our goal is to make our cells make those antibodies. And that's the purpose of making this new COVID-19 vaccine. So what happens that, what is a vaccine anyway? For many of you, you would like to know. Vaccine is a very small, weak, non-dangerous fragment of the organism, which is actually causing the disease, that includes the part of the antigen. And that is enough that our body or our cells can learn how to build the specific antibody against that. So it's a very small dose, if you will, of the original antigen or the virus which is introduced in the body. And then we have our body react to it and make the antibodies to fight. And these antibodies are stored and are controlled by what is called the memory cells of the body. So they remember that if this kind of protein antigen again attacks the body or enters the body, they are now prepared to identify it, attack it, and neutralize it. And that's how the vaccines work. So let's see how we accomplish this. There are a few more things to learn about this, and this slide is important. Originally, when I was putting this slide in, I was wondering that this is too much science to teach to regular people, but it's important because there are a couple of cases of allergy to the virus have been described in UK, and that concern has of course filtered through to United States, and all our minds, we are thinking, what will happen to me if I'm allergic to? So what are the allergies? What are those allergies in a vaccine? Of course, you could be allergic to the vaccine itself, but there are preservatives, and these preservatives the purpose of these preservatives, once the bottle of the virus, of the vaccine, is opened, it can be contaminated to the other organisms, other things. And there is a very common substance called the 2-phenoxyethanol, which is responsible for keeping the product, here in this case vaccine, but even this phenoxyethanol is an ingredient in a lot of baby products. So it is non-toxic to the humans, or very little toxic to the humans, that it has been approved to be used in baby products. So that is part of this vaccine process. There is something called stabilizers, and stabilizers, their purpose is to prevent the chemical reaction within this vaccine itself, and these are made out of the sugars, the lactose and gelatin and things like that, and one could be allergic to that. There is something called surfactant to keep all the ingredients of the viral vaccine blended together. We use surfactant in the ice cream industry, so that is well known. Many residuals, in order to develop and manufacture the vaccine, a lot of inactive ingredients are used in the production of this vaccine, and they are not necessarily participating actively, but one could be rather allergic to one of these inactive ingredients, and you will know that egg protein. So whenever you are getting your flu vaccine, you are asked a question, are you allergic to eggs? And that is the egg protein, which is the residual from the developmental process of the vaccine itself. There are antibiotics, yeast, etc., but egg protein is considered to be one of the major ones. And then diluent in order to get the correct concentration of the vaccine. So those are some of the things that are present in the vaccine, and one could be allergic to these products. Well, the good news is that these allergies are minor and they do not cause significant problems, as we will go into this talk a little more and see. So what are these phases of the, why does the vaccine development or drug development takes a long time? Because everything has to be studied very, very carefully. And I would like to make a case that how the scientific process has not been compromised, except, as I said, the bureaucratic process is compromised. When the files or papers or data is sitting there and people are reviewing it at their pace, that was eliminated. Or if the project is slowed down because of the financial problems, well, there was enough funding given to all these companies. About 50 plus companies are developing vaccines, and they all have been given ample funding so that those resources are available, and viral development, or the vaccine development is not compromised. So in phase one, the phase one is done with few volunteers, human volunteers in vaccine development, and we are looking at the safety of the vaccine, immune response, and how much dose is needed to accomplish that immune response. So that's the phase one study. The phase two study is a little more elaborate, and hundreds of people are volunteers are involved, and it evaluates different age groups, how the virus is going to affect those, and how and what dose is needed to get the desired immune response, and how the different formulations are going to work. So this is the phase two trial that is done on hundreds of people. And then the phase 3 trial, as you know, you have heard about that these are the large trials. Pfizer phase 3 trial had 44,000 people. It is done in many countries, different ethnicities, and many different sites. And we are still looking at the safety, immune response, dose, side effects, everything. So these are very elaborate trials. They are done by the well-trained professionals and highly regulated by the FDA and other regulating agencies, which have nothing to do, they have no conflict of interest with the development of this vaccine. There are third-party monitors who will very carefully look at the developmental process. And this is very important to understand that in this scientific process, one cannot cut the corners. And then what this is submitted to the FDA. There is an advisory board, which in case of the Pfizer vaccine met 2 days ago and approved it. And then it was presented to the FDA, and they looked at it and then finally approved. And this approval is not the final approval. This approval is also emergency use authorization. So still research will continue because of the pandemic and its fatal nature. The vaccine is approved. Let's look at that, what kind of vaccines are already available, and why we are a little more concerned about this genetic-based or genomic-based vaccine. There are inactivated vaccines where the virus is actually inactivated, so it does not have the same virulence or same effect, serious effect once it goes into the body. And we receive it every year. Flu vaccine, you remember the polio vaccine, rabies vaccine. These vaccines are all available and we have received it. There are subunit vaccine. You take a small subunit of the virus itself, and then it will make the antibodies against that virus. And the available vaccine that many of the healthcare providers have taken, many of our patients take, are the hepatitis B vaccine and the shingles vaccine, which is available right now. Then virus-like particle vaccines. So this is not the actual virus, but it is synthetic virus-like particle that is introduced into the human body as a vaccination. And currently available vaccine is the papillomavirus vaccine that is in practice. And then there are viral vector vaccines. In this technology, you take another virus with low virulence, let's say adenovirus, which is most commonly used. It's almost like a rhinovirus, the cold coryza type of symptoms virus. And then you introduce the vector or the RNA or the particle of the virus into this, the virus in question, into this vector virus, which is in this case the adenovirus, and then it will form the antibodies against the virus vector that has been introduced. And one such vaccine is available, which is the Ebola vaccine. But DNA technology and the RNA technology, as I said, is there for a long time, except we did not have a virus or vaccine against these viruses with the DNA or RNA technology. And in the next slide, we'll see that what's the difference between these two technologies. So we have already talked about inactivated vaccines. We have talked about these protein vaccines, how we do it. But let's focus here. Viral vector we talked about. But here is the DNA vaccine and the RNA vaccine. And this slide is also important for your education so that you can understand some of the complications that have been brought up potentially by people, and I would like to address those. So here in the RNA vaccine, this little RNA gene sequence that we saw the alphabets in the third or fourth slide is introduced in a little nanoparticle of lipid so that it is stable inside the vaccine, and then is introduced into the human body. And once this goes into the human body, it latches onto the human cell and it starts producing the antibodies. And that is the first shot of our COVID-19 virus. We'll talk about that just in a second. In case of the DNA vaccine, a number of DNA vaccines are being worked on and investigated at this time. And the same protein, instead of introduced in the RNA and with the lipid nanoparticles capsule, it is introduced into complementary DNA. And this again will make DNA to messenger RNA, and RNA will have the copies of the desired protein and the antibodies made. So this is, in a nutshell, is the simplified version of genetics that is pertinent to our understanding. Next few slides are a lot more easier to understand and simpler. So why are we worried about? What is the hesitancy? And a lot of people have concerns. And there are three main reasons that have been talked about. First of all is the vaccine came out too quickly. And what happens here in the blue, you will see that everything is 6 to 12 months, which is 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 2 to 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. So all this process, the initial process, preclinical evaluations, the phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, FDA and other agencies' approval, large scale production, by the way, which is again scaling these substances is another big production problem. So that takes a lot of time, and of course getting it to the consumer, the delivery. So all of this can take somewhere from 7 to 8 years to 14 to 15 years before it is administered in the human. So now we are talking about, historically speaking, every vaccine that was developed, it took so long time. Now, when we look at COVID-19 vaccine, everything is in the months, and this is the faster pace. Each process is 0 to 1 month, 0 to 1 month. So we can say 30 days, 30 days. Here is 3 trials, phase 1, 2, and 3, done in less than 1 year. Almost, I want to say 8 to 9 months. Large scale production was simultaneous. they did not wait with what the fate of the virus, the vaccine will be, whether it is going to be approved or not approved. They continued to develop the production, large scaling plants, and also the distribution channels at the same time as the vaccine was being developed, so that once the vaccine is approved, we do not wait by hours for the production or the distribution and deliver it to administration to humans. I was asked last Thursday that next week, which is the coming week, tomorrow, you are listening to this webinar on Sunday, I can get my vaccine on Monday. So this is how fast this process worked. And this pace makes us uncomfortable, appropriately so. We like to think, we like to feel comfortable with something like this, especially when you have not heard anything before that, whether it's safe or unsafe, or you hear about allergies or other side effects on the media. There may be some political issues related with the hydroxychloroquine. If you remember, it was authorized for use, and then FDA actually rescinded it and said that clinical trials later showed that it did not work and they had to take it back. And that leaves us with a little bad taste in the mouth and lack of confidence whether we will accept the new vaccine or not. And final reason for the hesitancy involves in the uniqueness of this virus. We all know that this is not just simple flu-like virus. It causes vasculitis, so inflammation of the blood vessels, strokes, you know what it is, heart attacks, you know what it is, kidney problems, kidney failure, bleeding, clotting, and liver disease, all of the above. So what the fear is then about these? Because people think that if vaccine gave me COVID-19 disease, I will potentially I can suffer all of these disorders or some of these disorders. Well, that is not the case, as we will see. This virus also is unique in the sense that it is continuously present, perennial, throughout the year. It does not care whether it's cold, so flu virus comes in the winter months, etc. It was present in summer months and it is present in winter months. It's relentless. So let's talk about RNA and DNA vaccines quickly. They both contain, and these RNA and DNAs actually both contain genetic information for protein production. RNA makes the copies of that protein. DNA requires intermediate step because DNA has to convert into the RNA, and then RNA will make the copies. So there is an extra step for the DNA. And then for the RNA vaccine, mRNA or messenger RNA is not stable enough to stay in the human cell for a long time, or in the vaccine for the long time. So it had to be wrapped in, of course, there's a great deal of technology involved, in the lipid nanoparticles so that it stays until it gets to the human cell, and then there it starts the genetic process, which is the activating our own immune system to build up the antibodies. So this injected RNA in the virus, that serves as a template for the body cell to produce a viral protein, the spike protein that is called. So DNA vaccine, on the other hand, a number of DNA vaccines are around the corner. We will see them probably in the next few years. They are made up of a circular DNA. I showed you that picture called a plasmid, and that plasmid is introduced to the DNA, which is again transcribed into RNA, and RNA, as you know, serves as a template for making the antibodies. There are 6 RNA vaccine candidates right now currently being tested. 2 are already, 1 is approved, and 1 will be hopefully approved within a week or so. What are the pros and cons of mRNA vaccines? This is a genetic vaccine. We are quite concerned appropriately about these vaccines. These vaccines can be highly promising. Why? Because they have better safety profile. They are flexible. You can manipulate them. You can scale that very, very rapidly. Millions of doses can be produced very, very quickly, and therefore there's a lot of cost savings. Well, cost at this time in the middle of the pandemic is perhaps not concerning for the moment. What is the efficacy? Well, from the FDA and historically speaking about all other vaccines, a good vaccine is considered to be if it is 50% efficacious. That is, once given to 100 people, at least 50 people will have the antibodies formation, and this vaccine will be protective for that particular disease that they are vaccinated against. The efficacy of the Pfizer's vaccine is 95%. Which is amazing. I'm sure you've been watching news and it's all over there. Many preclinical reports have endorsed the application of mRNA-based vaccines for these 6 candidates, which are still in the process. Early clinical trials and UK experience has shown that people are tolerating these vaccines very well. We'll talk about side effects in a minute. The only downside is that how long the prophylactic effect of this vaccine will last, and that only time will tell as we will monitor more. The messenger RNA vaccine, they work by providing the genetic code that we saw, the long code, for ourselves to provide the viral proteins. Once the proteins, these are benign proteins, they don't cause the disease, they are produced in the body, and body launches an immune response, not like the immune response that we have seen with the COVID-19 disease. So this immune response enables the person to develop the immunity, and this immunity is in the form of the to simplify it, in the form of the antibodies. mRNA can be used to produce any protein that we design. So it can be used into developing vaccines and therapies against many diseases. So there is a lot of potential of this technology that's coming up. These are very simple to manufacture and scale and produce. What are some of the challenges? If somebody had to give ordinary mRNA, it will only produce low levels of proteins in the human body, and molecule will degrade, and that's why we are packing it, excuse me, in the lipid nanoparticles. So it cannot be just given and be used as a therapeutic option. RNA itself can trigger an immune response if it's just given like that without control. That is independent of the response to the protein it encodes. So that response can be what we call in scientific language non-specific, and that is not desirable. If you just inject the foreign RNA into people or animals, you can induce a very serious inflammatory response. So, and this is not what we are doing. We are introducing a very, very calculated dose to generate a very calculated response. On the other hand, DNA is a lot more stable and much easier to work with because of the stability. All right, so let's look at the last scientific slide, I guess. This is an article that was published in 2005 in the Immunity, Suppression of RNA Recognition, etc., by Catalin Carrico. Well, this was done in University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Carrico is now a senior vice president of BioNTech, the partner company with the Pfizer, and is the developer of the vaccine, which is already approved, and we are likely to get it starting next week, Monday. And they are the ones in this paper who talked about this lipid nanoparticle that I repeatedly talked about, etc. But the application that they thought would be of this technology would be in cancer patients, autoimmune disorders, which is like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, etc., many infectious diseases, as well as genetic disorders. So the potential is immense. And we are going to probably, hopefully, see in our lifetimes the benefits of this technology. The Pfizer vaccine, as well as the Moderna vaccine requires 2 doses of vaccination. Why? So day one, first vaccine dose is given. It takes about 10 to 12 days to start to build the initial immunity and body's memory cells. Now remember that this is the antigen, and if anything like this is going to come, we have to start triggering our defense and make antibodies against it, and that's when we get the second vaccine 3 weeks later, and it takes another week for the body to develop full immunity. Therefore, there are 2 vaccines. This second vaccine is known to cause some reactions that we are a little concerned about, that we will talk from here on. So people have concern, and of course there was a University of Michigan poll to see what people are thinking. And these number of people were surveyed between the age of 50 to 80 years old, which are considered to be the high-risk group. 20%, 1 in 5 said, I'd like to get the vaccine as soon as it becomes available, and I'm entitled to take it. Almost half of them said that they would like to take it, but they will wait and see until others receive it, and hopefully they will be doing fine, then I'll make my decision. Many of us, I would think, fall into this category, whether we have unfounded fears or we have genuine fears. Nevertheless, these are our fears. 1 in 5 is unsure whether they will take the vaccine or not take the vaccine, and about 14-15%, they really don't like to get it, whether it's their religious belief, they are just too scared, or whatever they are thinking, but that's their value system. What are the side effects? So side effects, once you have the infection and that are known, and I think UK is 1 week ahead of us, so we'll learn a lot more as we go forward. Remember, 100 million doses by February, or it will take longer if there are no setbacks. So we have short-term side effects like injection site pain and redness, tiredness, fatigue, muscle pain, aches, joint aches, pains, and headaches. These are some of the minor side effects that are reported in the phase 3 trials, and some of them are reported from the UK. These side effects either resolved spontaneously or with analgesics like Tylenol or some Advil or Motrin-like medications. The older adults may experience fewer side effects, and people over 65 and others will have fewer side effects. Hypothetically, because as with age, decline in the immune response, so that immune response that is triggered by the vaccine is not that intense, although you will still make the antibodies if you are in that age group, but the response will be less. And a coronavirus vaccine itself can produce a blunted immune response, so in a normal cell. We really don't know how different subpopulations will react to the virus, to vaccine in terms of the side effects, and this is still being studied. And I'm sure as we'll continue to watch it over the weeks, we'll learn a lot about this. There was social media sometimes is not as good as it can be. There was something that a microchip is being injected, a genetic microchip, which is going to alter the human DNA. Well, that is totally incorrect. Injecting an RNA into any person, human, does not do anything to DNA of the human cell. And I'll show you by an example. So if there is a jump drive that you put in your computer, jump drive only works for what material it has inside, uses the pertinent software which is loaded on your computer. It just does not do anything to your hard drive. So that's the analogy that I would like to give in terms of this RNA vaccine. So RNA vaccine, what it does, it just gives the instruction to produce a protein which is present on the surface of the coronavirus, and this protein in turn is going to make the antibodies which will fight the coronavirus if it ever enters your body. So this theory is completely debunked and useless, and please don't pay attention to this kind of propaganda. There are some more side effects. Vaccine side effects may occur in about 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 people. Most side effects are mild, as I said, and resolve in a couple of days. Side effects could be more noticeable than from other adult vaccines like flu vaccine because of the myalgia and arthralgia, the muscle pain, bone pain. Side effects might be more likely after the second dose because the body already has the immune response in the memory cells ready to act. Side effects are a good sign that the vaccine is working. So you know that your body's immune system is manipulated for the benefit and for the protection against the coronavirus. One cannot get the COVID-19 from the vaccine. It is medically impossible because the dose that is given and the formulation it is, this is not going to be able to generate the same kind of problem because it's all regulated dosing that you get, and that we all know from our experience with variety of hundreds of vaccines that are available to humans. Most people do not have serious problems after being vaccinated. This is proven from the 44,000 people who participated in the Pfizer phase 3 trial. And compared to this, minor side effects with having COVID-19 disease, where one can be sick for weeks to months, have post-COVID syndrome, or can even be fatal to death. So vaccination definitely is a safer option than having the disease itself. Which vaccine has the fewer side effects? Well, we really don't know at this point, and time will tell. However, what the data says, Moderna vaccine had many side effects. 10% people had fatigue, 9% or 10% had the muscle pain and joint pain, and about 5% had the headache pain. And it looks like the Pfizer vaccine, according to phase 3 trial data, has fewer side effects. About 4% of the people had fatigue and 2% of the people had headaches. Both vaccines had less than 2% of the people have high fever, which was recorded at 102 to 104 degrees, and responded to the proper medications. Are there any long-term side effects? Obviously, we do not know, because the only time we will know is when that time has to pass after the vaccination is done. So these vaccines are still tested for the long-term side effects. At this time, no long-term safety issues have been detected, but the time has not passed. FDA and CDC will be watching very, very closely, and of course, we'll get the information. So what do we know so far for sure? One thing we know, that we don't want COVID-19. Is dangerous, so we don't want that. COVID-19 can cause long-term health problem. Post-COVID-19 syndrome is now a medical diagnosis, even in mild cases. Unlikely to find any vaccine-related side effects that are riskier than actually having COVID-19 disease itself. So those are some of the things that we definitely know. So how do we prepare for having the vaccination? Okay, so they say the side effects are going to be mild for many people, and many people is 10 to 15% of people, and hopefully we will be the 85 to 90% who did not have any effect. We'll learn a lot more from the UK experience, because they are a week ahead of us. So they may still interrupt our daily life, and recommendation is prepare to take a day or two off from work or whatever important agenda that you have after the vaccination. And have whatever you need, let's say Tylenol, some pain medication, a fever medication, liquids, Gatorade if you don't feel well because of that. So rest, fluid, and over-the-counter medications are what is recommended at this time. So that's your preparation for the COVID-19 vaccine. What's the latest information? And I waited for this information to come in from UK until today, realizing that webinar is tomorrow so that we can learn. There was a news of allergic reaction. There were 2 National Health Services workers who had the allergic reaction. And these allergic reactions were not anaphylaxis, which is really serious, but this was anaphylactoid, which is close to anaphylaxis, which means there is a skin rash, shortness of breath, or sometimes a drop in the blood pressure. Well, both these workers had history of serious allergies, and they carried adrenaline pens. In United States, we call them EpiPen, and many of you know about it. So they carried it. So they already were prone to have allergic reaction to many things. I still have not found any more cases as of the recording on Saturday. So we should be watchful. But both the patients are having, they are treated, they are having good time, and they are fine. Bell's palsy is another complication that was noted and reported in 4 cases, and that is a sudden weakness or freezing of muscles on one side of the face. So it seems like that part of the face is not functioning well. In most cases it is temporary, and over weeks the results of the Bell's palsy reverse. So asymmetrical smile, etc., and even the congestion in the eye, inability to close the eye, and things like that. So not a very sightly or desirable condition, but nevertheless it was reported in 4 cases. At this time it is not known whether it has anything to do with the vaccine, or these people would have Bell's palsy anyway, which is a common outpatient disease commonly seen by the primary care providers. There are reports of 6 deaths in the Pfizer trial, which had 44,000 people in the phase 3. Of those 6 deaths, 2 received the vaccine and 4 were part of the placebo group, which was the saline, normal saline, salt and water. One of the vaccine recipient had the cardiac arrest almost 2 months after the second dose of the 2-dose vaccination, and then he died 3 weeks later, or 3 days later, excuse me, after the cardiac arrest. The other died from arteriosclerosis 3 days after the first dose of the vaccine. So he actually did not have even the second dose of the vaccine, which causes the reaction. The 4 people who had the placebo, 1 recipient died from the myocardial infarction, that is heart attack, other from the stroke, and 2 others of unknown causes. FDA reviewed it and did not find any association that could be deemed related to the vaccines. But that's the data that is public information and should be reported. Here is the New York Times on December 11th. FDA approves Pfizer vaccine for the emergency use. And of course, it's so important as we can see what this pandemic is doing. And these are the new cases that we have in the United States. You listen to the news every morning and evening, and it is so distressing. In that light, I tell you that we have made a big discovery, a big development of this vaccine. The first lady who received the vaccine in UK, Mrs. Maggie Keenan, she's 90 years old and is doing fine, while we still have a lot of political stuff going on in the United States, and we don't have to pay a lot of attention to that and educate ourselves and see what our position is to receive the vaccine. So I call it a huge leap forward for the science, and I thank you so much for listening to this longish webinar, but I hope that I have provided you with enough information that you will be able to make a decision for yourself that how soon you will be prepared to take this vaccine. And remember, it is free of cost and only few side effects that are known so far, and I'm preparing myself to take the vaccine. Thank you so much.